So welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Amy Wedel. I'm the Director of Concrete Pavements for Florida Concrete and Products Association. I have 25 years experience in the industry, much of that spent working on sustainable construction projects and materials. So very happy to talk to you today about Pervious Concrete. So Florida Concrete and Products Association is the industry association for the cement, concrete, aggregate, admixtures, concrete paving contractors in the state of Florida, as well as the associated businesses around this industry. So I want to say a big thank you to our members for making these webinars possible. So what is Pervious Concrete? So today is an overview to make sure, so I know that the attendees today are at different knowledge levels on Pervious Concrete. So today's a bit introduction. We will get a little bit into the details just for those who aren't familiar to make sure you understand the differences in traditional concrete and pervious concrete. It's a quite different product. So we're gonna, but there's many more videos and details, and I'll show you where those are available to go into more detail. So they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. What is a video worth? Let's see how this video plays here. All right, so I'm hoping that that you're able to see this fairly well. But we'll play it again at the end, just for those who get on late. So pervious concrete, as the name states, allows the water to permeate the pavement layer, and as you saw in that video, very rapidly. So this is a close-up. What does it look like? On the right here you have pervious, and on the left you have traditional concrete. Kind of looks like a Rice Krispie treat. It's not going to taste like one. And there is void space to allow the water to drain through. So we also call it a no fines concrete. So the mixture is your coarse aggregate, your Portland cement, and water, maybe some admixtures and some fiber, but there's no sand. So it's got enough of the paste that will hold the aggregate together, but it's still allowing that void space. So it's going to be somewhere between 15 to 25% void space. And as you can see here, it's allowing, depending on the mix, depending on the size of the aggregates, 300 to 1,000 inches per hour. So how much rain is in an afternoon thunderstorm? Really heavy downpour, you're getting an inch or 2 inches per hour, and that's really a heavy rain. So the limiting factor is not the pervious concrete. And this is, and we're going to talk more about this, but it's a stormwater management tool in both managing quantity and quality of your water. And that's very important, especially to us here in Florida. We have some water quality issues, and this is one additional tool that you can use to help with your water quality. So there's a lot on this slide here. Don't worry about the details right now. We're going to talk through those. But what I want to say is, so we talk about pervious concrete, that's your pavement layer, but Pervious concrete is part of a stormwater management system. So the whole point of having the pervious pavement is to make sure that you're managing that stormwater, you have a place for it to go, that your groundwater is not too high, that the soil is sandy and it's not going to be clay and blocking the infiltration of the water. So it's a part of a stormwater management system. So where are the best applications for pervious concrete? And it's best in areas with a lighter traffic load, and this can be parking lots, driveways, sidewalks, residential streets. It's also good as a base material, but we don't want to use it in industrial applications where you have heavy traffic. And a little asterisk about basketball courts, tennis courts, we're going to touch on that coming up here. And again, if you have a high water table, which some parts of Florida in certain times of the year will have a very high water table, and if the water can drain straight through your pervious concrete, but it still needs to have some place to go. So that can be a challenge for certain projects. So parking lots, this is really the ideal application because you have a large surface area and you have some pollutants dripping from the cars. And this can be, you can have the entire parking area be pervious, or you can combine it with asphalt, you can combine it with concrete, and it is replacing your stormwater retention pond. So driveways, again, this is also going to help with the water getting back into the ground for the landscaping. So driveways is another great application. Sidewalks and paths through parks. I don't know if you walk down the sidewalk and you're having to jump around the puddles and step over the puddles, then you can appreciate this. I walk every day and I get tired of the puddles, the afternoon thunderstorms, and it's nice to have a dry pathway. Now, pervious concrete does meet ADA requirements. It's also okay to walk on with heels, and the smaller aggregate size that you have, the smoother surface you will have. So it is meeting all of those requirements. So there's no need to worry there. A little Rice Krispie, but not to the point that it's a problem for walking. Streets and alleyways. Again, as we get denser development, you can have a lot of flooding in your local streets and also in the alleys behind their houses. So I have seen this in several projects where a neighborhood has had challenges with flooding in the streets and the alleys, and so they will go in and make part of that pervious, and that will help alleviate the overflow where in some cases the stormwater system can't handle the peak afternoon thunderstorm. And under light rain it's fine, but if you get heavy rain, which we've seen here in South Florida in the past months, we've seen where you get day after day after day, and the ground is really saturated, and sometimes your stormwater system gets overwhelmed. So streets and alleyways, another great application. Okay, so we don't recommend it for industrial facilities. It is not going to have the same strength and durability as traditional concrete. It works fine for lighter traffic, but when you're having these really heavy traffic loads, it doesn't have the same durability. So basketball courts, tennis courts, because it's not a completely smooth surface, they're saying, you know, this is not the best place for pervious concrete. However, it's actually a great application for pervious concrete. If you're a tennis player and you're out there with the squeegee trying to dry off the court after a rain so you can get back to play, there are these materials that they put over top of the concrete that gives you your color and your markings and your smooth playing surface, while the pervious concrete underneath is keeping that dry. So if you have a heavy rain, you can, once it stops, you're immediately back out there in play. And I do see some projects like that. The people are very happy. So this is a great application for pervious concrete. You just want to have that top layer that's going to give you that smooth surface. So let's talk now about the benefits of pervious concrete, both economic and environmental benefits. So if land is cheap, you can buy additional property for your stormwater retention pond in a development project. However, we see prices going up and up, and sometimes there's simply not space, or you don't want to take that space and allocate it to a stormwater pond. There could also be other challenges like breeding mosquitoes, or making sure you got to keep it fenced off so no small children fall in the pond, or you're not attracting alligators to your pond, these sorts of things. But primarily it's the cost of the land. So if you do not have to set aside land for water storage, you can use that property to expand your development project for, for more buildings, and put this underneath your parking spaces. So there's a lot of different environmental benefits. Predominantly, what the benefit is to get the water back in the ground and recharge your groundwater. So most places across the US is pumping groundwater far exceeding the rate of recharge. So we're conserving our water resources. It's helping the vegetation without using as much irrigation. Another thing that's not talked about too much is the temperature of the water. The temperature of the water running off of a hot asphalt pavement into a local waterway can actually impact the biodiversity and the life in that stream by raising the temperature. So this is getting the water back into the ground, where it's filtering slowly into that local waterway in a clean manner. So it's reducing the volume being and the surface pollutants, as well as the temperature. And the pervious concrete will also have a cooler surface temperature and mitigate your heat island effect. So let's look at it here. Pre-development, you have completely pervious surface, and your water's infiltrating through the plant and the land back into your underground reservoirs. Post-development, you can, and we're seeing some areas that are almost 100% impervious, and this is really challenging, having the well water that is required and overwhelming the storm system. And so what we can do is have a low impact development and have part of the area pervious, where the water is getting back into the ground, where it can be cleaned and recharge the aquifer. Another aspect, the Pervious allows us to pave very close to the landscaping. And you're not only getting water, but you're also getting air back into the roots of those trees. And sometimes this can cause pop-outs where the roots are actually coming up because they've been sealed off and they're trying to find air and they're trying to find water. So the Pervious will help the water and the air get to the roots and keeping the landscape alive and doing well with less need for irrigation, as well as keeping the roots down in the ground and not having the pop-ups from the roots growing towards the surface. So have you ever been in a parking lot after a rain and you see that shiny metallic sheen on the water? That is your oil and your fluids from your car. And that can, if you have an impervious parking lot, that can go straight into your storm drain and into your local waterways. So this lovely green picture we have here is something that some of us in Florida are familiar with. Now, there's a lot of other pollutants, not just coming from the parking lots. I'm not, we have lots of challenges with water quality here in Florida. However, this is one more step that we can take, and the EPA requires what they're calling a first flush, and that's that first inch of rainfall to be cleaned before it goes into the waterway. And Pervious concrete is recognized by the EPA as well as Florida water management districts as a best management practice. So this is not something so new that it's experimental. It's been, there are many projects out there. We've got parking lots that are 30 years old, still performing well. And it is in the stormwater management guide as a best practice that you can use to clean your rainwater. So let's help reduce one other source of pollutants. There's other things we need to do, but parking lots is one thing that we can do with Pervious concrete. What happens is when the oil or gas goes down into those void spaces, there are microbes that are living in those spaces and helping to clean it. We have tests that are showing even if the water's just going through the pervious concrete, it's coming out cleaner than if it's just being directly run off of the parking lot. But additionally, if it's getting down into the soil, your soil microbes are also playing a function to break down those pollutants as well, so that when it gets back into the aquifer, the water is cleaned. We have some lead projects here in Florida, and Pervious concrete can contribute to some of the credits. So under the site section, there is a credit for stormwater runoff, and there's also a credit for urban heat islands. So it will help contribute to both of those. And under the water section, there is a credit for water quality, and there's also a credit for water conservation. So it will help contribute to all of those credits. Additionally, under the materials section, there is an environmental product declaration for concrete, and that's one of your requirements for your sustainably sourced materials. So pervious concrete and traditional concrete will help reduce the urban heat island effect. So your concrete is going to be 10 to 20 degrees lower than your asphalt. And the 10 to 20 is where, if you've ever walked across a parking lot that's had a new asphalt seal, you know how shiny and black and really hot it can be. And with time, that lightens up a bit and the binder breaks down and you're left with more exposed aggregate. So here you can see your concrete sidewalk in the middle of the picture coming in, and this is Fort Lauderdale, June, 1:30 in the afternoon. You got your concrete coming in at 132 degrees and your aged asphalt that's lightened up a bit at 141 degrees and your newly resurfaced asphalt coming in at 152 degrees. So Pervious will be even cooler than this traditional concrete because you also have the moisture and evaporation. Okay, so next we're going to talk about Pervious concrete design. So it's a system, there's different parts. You have your Pervious concrete pavement layer, and you have your base layer, and then you have your curb turning it into a retention pond. So this water can be captured and reused. I don't think we do this a lot in Florida because we don't have a shortage of water like is really an acute problem in other states. But I just want to put this in there to let you know that this can be done. And if you're somewhere that needs to reuse water or is short on water. So back to, this is a system. This is a dry detention pond that's underneath of your parking lot. So you no longer have to set aside additional space on your development for it. So you have your pervious concrete layer, you have your aggregate reservoir, and here you're going to have about 40% void space, and it's just, it would be your 57 stone. Their geotextile fabric is going to maintain that separation between your soil and your reservoir. You're going to want, depending on the project, you don't have to have a curb, but if you're butting up to asphalt, you would want one because you don't want that water that's running straight through the pavement to undermine the base of your asphalt. And so you want to make sure that it's going down into the soil and not washing out anything that may be to the side of it. Now there are some projects that are on very sandy soil that the water infiltrates very quickly, and you can put the pervious concrete directly on the subgrade. Depending on the project and depending on if it's important, how quickly you need to have that pavement dry again. So it's possible to do that. I think it's best to have the aggregate base layer, both to make sure that you're going to have that dry pavement, which is what you want when you're specifying pervious concrete. You're doing it because you're happy to not have a parking lot that you have to step out of your car into an inch of water. It's going to stay dry. But if it's a sidewalk or with grass surrounding it, then and the soil is draining quickly, then that could be quite fine. So here's the calculation of how much water your stormwater management system that you're designing is going to hold. So your pervious concrete layer is going to have 20% void space. And so in 6 inches of concrete, you're going to have 20%, and then in your aggregate base layer, you have 40% void space. So if you have a 6-inch aggregate layer, you will have 3.6 inches of storage without going above the pervious concrete surface. So we're going to show you a spreadsheet, but it's really just that simple. How much water do you need to hold? How quickly will that 3.6 inches drain into the soil? So that's the limiting factor, is how quickly it will get back into the soil from your reservoir. So you're typically going to have a 5-inch thickness for sidewalks, 5 to 6 inches for parking lots or residential driveways, and up to 8 inches for a street or a commercial driveway. So we're saying here, we don't recommend to use it for industrial situations. I can tell you that there are some projects that are using it in industrial situations, and we do know how to make it stronger. And so it's possible, but I'm going to say at this point in time I'm not recommending it till we continue to build up more information. But if you're putting a little more sand back in the mix, you're going to have a little stronger pavement and a little less void space. So you can play around with that, and we're building up that data to understand better how it can be used in an industrial setting. So for right now, let's look at designing for a parking lot, this is the primary purpose or best use of pervious pavement. So I want to introduce to you today Pavement Designer. This is not specifically for pervious concrete, but you can use it to design for pervious concrete as well as a lot of other things. So if you're new to presentations by Florida Concrete and Products Association, then maybe you haven't heard myself or Roger talk about this yet, but it's some really great software that the industry has put together, and it makes designing concrete really pretty easy. So this software, you can look at parking lots, you can look at streets, you can look at intermodal facility, and with traditional concrete, you can also do roller compacted concrete. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this software. So that's going to be another presentation on another day. We're going to talk about the software. So today, let's just look at a parking lot example. And this is a light traffic parking lot. Maybe you get a trash truck in there once or twice a week. So you can put in some project level information. Again, you really need to know about your soil. What is your geotechnical report telling you about the strength of your subgrade? So, this defaults to CBR value, but you can put directly in there the resilience modulus of your soil. And it's going to give you a pavement thickness. Now for pervious concrete, because this was for traditional concrete, so for pervious, you're going to want to add another 20%, about another inch here. That's getting back to what we would anticipate, about 5 3/4 inch thickness for a light traffic parking lot. So I encourage you to go to pavementdesigner.org and check out this software. But let's go back to talking about pervious concrete. So you can use this software and get that, or just know that you're going to look at probably 6 inches for a parking lot and 5 inches for a sidewalk. So that was the pavement layer. And me make sure I'm not running the time. Okay, we're good on time. All right, so now let's talk about the subbase or the reservoir layer. How do you know how thick that needs to be? Well, we've got some software for that too. Again, I showed you can just do some simple math with 20% void space in the pavement layer, 40% in the aggregate storage layer. And you could, but this is a spreadsheet-based software that's doing that same calculations for you in a little more sophisticated manner, or making it easy to add some other information in there. So here you're going to put in the thickness of your pervious pavement. What is your porosity or your void space? You're going to put in your base layer and its void space. Ponding limit. We didn't talk yet that much about ponding limit, but if you have those curbs, you can use the area above as ponding if you need to, so that if there were an extreme event, which we're seeing around the country, more of these 100-year floods that come every few years. So you can have that additional storage with the curb around your parking lot. So another really important piece of information that you need to have is your exfiltration rate. What is the, how quickly will that water go into the soil? So this software also allows you to add area that is draining rainfall onto your pervious. So you could have a roof or a traditional concrete or asphalt that would also have that rainfall collected in your pervious system. So this project's in Boca Raton, and the 100-year flood, and there's some database behind. You can find if you need to design for a 20-year flood or 100-year flood. So this is looking at a 24-hour precipitation of 9¼ inches of rain. So once you have your input, you're going to go into your results section and first take a look at the graph. Okay, so I'll tell you what you're seeing here, because it's not clear immediately. Up here at the top, these blue lines are representing your rainfall, and this is your 9¼ inch rainfall. So along the bottom, this is your water level, and this bottom section is your reservoir, the aggregate layer. That's your 6 inches of aggregate. And then this middle is your pervious pavement, your pervious concrete pavement. So in this example, there was 5 inches. And then they also had a ponding limit. This is your curb. It's another 4 inches. And you can see at the heaviest rainfall, the reservoir fills up, but it never even gets into the pervious layer. So this might be important if you're up north and it freezes and thaws. Okay, we don't need to worry about that here in Florida. But if you want to keep the ponding limit below your pavement so that no one ever has to step out of their car into a puddle of water, then you can use this software and see how much reservoir you need. And so if the water were to come up above here, then you can add more aggregate. So you can go back and forth and you can see, okay, I had 4 inches and that wasn't enough. And now let me see what 6 inches, or to make sure that you don't have an over design of your storage area. So pretty fun software. we can help you with these designs. I think maybe that's the other important point I want to make today, is that if you have a pervious project or you see where one would be valuable, we can help you with the design. So my contact will be at the end of the presentation, and we will help you with these different softwares and help you get the right design for your project. So here's showing some of the output from this software. And again, you want to make sure that the bottom of your reservoir layer has space between the water table so that it has a place to drain to. And the ponding is allowed in Florida. You can use that curb and that ponding area if you need to. Okay, so there are a lot of different ready-mix companies that are using different materials from different parts of the state. And this gives, so like I was saying, there are other more intensive training that are for producers and for contractors. So today is more of an overview for your designers, your engineers, your owners, to know that there's some special mixed designs. You're going to want to do it a little bit different for pervious concrete. And this does take some trial and error. And there are many producers out there, many of our members, that they know they've already done this. They have their mixed design. They know what works with their materials. If you're in an area working with someone new, there is some guidelines that NRMCA, the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, can help them to come up with a good pervious concrete mix design. So you want to do some trial batches. You want to make sure that everything is proportioned right and that you've tested it, that it's discharging properly, and everyone's happy before you go to full production in your project. So if your water content is too low, you can have raveling where some of the stones are going to come loose and they're going to break away from your pavement. So you don't want your water content too low. You don't want it too high. You can then have a pavement that seals and you lose all of your void space. So your pervious concrete is different from your traditional concrete, and it's a little more picky or tough to get it just right. So you really want to have a contractor and a producer that have experience doing this and that are certified in doing this. So there are certifications in pervious concrete, and I will show you that here in another few slides. So quality control. Again, pervious concrete is different from traditional concrete. You cannot do a strength test. You don't do a slump test. These are not going to tell you what you need to know about your concrete. So the only acceptable test for pervious concrete is by unit weight. So just to know, when the pervious is a different type of concrete, it's a different type of product, and you need to work with people who do this. So another thing to look out for is where that your trucks are going to be able to reach your placement. You cannot pump it, so you need to be able to get the truck to the site. This picture is from a demonstration that we did last year, I believe, and we couldn't get the truck to the site. Now, this was a very small demonstration placement, and we had to use this buggy. And I can tell you, you don't want to move very much concrete in this manner. So you need to make sure that when you design your placement, that you're able to get the truck to all parts of that job site. Whoops, what am I doing here? All right, color. Pervious concrete may not be the most beautiful concrete, but it can be. It can be pretty cool looking, and you can color it. We're going to recommend that you use integral color, and this takes a little more labor, but you can end up with some really nice looking projects. Fiber. We do recommend using fiber with pervious concrete. It will help increase the permeability of the mix, and it will also give it a little more durability. So this is an application that fibers do add some really unique value to the pervious pavement. So header curbs, we talked a little bit about this, but you're going to need header curbs if you're butting up against asphalt, and even it can help with the placement in other applications, even if you're butting up against landscaping or grass or other concrete. So header curbs, they make the placement go easier, and they also can help with the durability of that pavement. So a raised curb is going to help keep that separation from your landscaping and keep the debris out of your parking lot. Okay, so you don't have to have a header curb. It can go into the adjacent area. You want to have a swale that can help manage that water as well. So a little bit about construction. You want to, probably the most challenging part is during the construction process. It would be best if you can do your pervious concrete at the end after other parts of the project are all done, because otherwise they're going to want to be putting their equipment on the pavement. They're going to, if your landscaping's not done. So that's the biggest challenge, is probably the landscaping, because that's also a last part of the project. And you don't want to have your pervious parking adjacent to dirt parking. So preparation of the subbase, also very important, because this is the limiting factor, is how quickly that water goes into the base. So you don't want to compact it the same as you would for traditional concrete. You want to compact it more to 92%. Your traditional concrete, you're going to want to compact much higher than that. So make sure that it doesn't get over compacted, or you're not going to have the infiltration that you designed for. The geotextile fabric, we talked about this. This is helping separate and maintain the void in your reservoir. Jointing. Now here's something that is very similar to traditional concrete. You want to keep your panels as square as you can. You want to make sure you're going perpendicular to the curb. You want to avoid acute angles. Make sure that you have isolation and anything that's abutting up to your pervious pavement. So jointing, similar to traditional concrete. That's one of the few places that is similar. However, you don't have to join it because when it does, when the cracks are not going to be able to be seen, and that's one of the reasons you joint, to have nice, clean, straight cracking of the concrete. The equipment that you use to finish it is different. You need a hydraulic roller. You need to be able to have that 10-foot So for a 10-foot, 40 pounds per foot, so 10 foot long, so you're gonna have 400-pound roller. So a little different equipment in finishing it. And if you see somebody out there with a hand trowel, you know they don't know what pervious concrete is. They don't know how to finish it because they're going to seal off the top. So if you ever see this, you're in trouble because you're awful late in the project. Find somebody who does know what they're doing and get them to properly finish the concrete. So you can join it with a jointing tool, or you can also join it with a saw. Curing, you're going to want to cover it with a 6 mil plastic for at least 7 days. This is very important. Other trades may come back and remove the plastic and mess up your project. So you want to cover it as quickly as you can to keep that moisture in the mix so that it can properly hydrate. You're going to have to take the plastic off to cut your joints and immediately put it back on. So that's a very important part of making sure you're going to end up with a good project. So you need to set expectations also that some of this curing can cause some discoloration. This will fade with time and with the sun, but you need to make sure that expectations are set, that there will be some discolorations, and to not be upset about it. It'll go away with time. Okay, permeability. When you finish the project, you want to do a test, the ASTM C1701, that you're going to seal, and there's a mark on the ring to show you where you're going to keep the head of water to that level in time, how quickly it infiltrates. So you want to do this once your project has been completed, to set a baseline for to know when you're going to need to do maintenance, or to make sure it's maintaining its permeability. So talking about maintenance, that is the number one question I get. Well, how do you maintain it? There's always a concern that it's not going to be maintained. So the National Ready Mix Concrete Association has published a maintenance guideline, but I don't think it's necessarily that complicated. If you have a heavy rainfall and it's not immediately disappearing, you need to do maintenance. And maintenance consists of vacuuming, pressure washing, and we have a lot of studies that have been carried out where they dumped a truckload of soil on top of their pervious, they wet it, they drove around on it, completely clogged it up, and they came back, did pressure washing, vacuuming, and they restored it to 80% of its original design drainage. So if you're starting with 1,000 inches in an hour, it can get pretty clogged and still function completely fine. And you can clean it and restore it to near brand new conditions. So this is an important website as well, paveahead.com. This is where you're going to find additional resources on pervious concrete. You're going to find additional webinars, and in fact, today at 2 p.m. this afternoon is a webinar on pervious concrete maintenance. So if you have a project coming up, or today you learned something really cool and you want to know more, this is a great resource. You can find the maintenance guideline here. You can find the other webinars that go into more detail on the different aspects of pervious concrete. So the National Ready Mix Concrete Association is the certification program for installers, and this you want to make sure in your specifications that you have a certified contractor on your project. And there's different levels of certification. So a craftsman, your technician is the lowest level, and they've passed the test, they've gone through an extensive program of training, and then with experience, you get to the higher levels. So on the NRMCA website, there is a database that will list all contractors that have that certification. So you can look them up and you can put that in your specs that you want a certified contractor on your project. So getting close to questions here, you can type questions in the sidebar. There's a couple example projects here. This is Clearwater, Florida. This is a sidewalk rehab. Beach parking, that's the key. They have not had issues with sand. Again, you just vacuum it like you do any other road or parking lot, and it maintains its pervious characteristics. Palm Beach State College, Loxahatchee Groves campus. I like what they did here. They put traditional concrete in the drive aisles and pervious in the parking stalls, and you just design it so that any runoff from the impervious surface can be captured in the pervious area. So for those of you who missed the video at the beginning, I'll show just a few seconds here. Now that you know what it is you're looking at, this is pervious concrete. It can take a huge volume of water and you can see it disappearing immediately. All right, so that is today's introduction to pervious concrete. Thank you. I have one announcement before we go to questions. So coming soon, we will have our first concrete conference September 23rd and 24th. You will see a registration coming out soon for that. We did not want to cancel. We will have it online, and if conditions permit in September, we'll try to have a face-to-face reception, because we do look forward to meeting all of you in person one of these days. So mark your calendar, September 23rd and 24th, learn more about concrete paving. And with that, I am happy to take some questions.
Okay, Amy, it's Roger Schmidt here. And this is the last question that came in. I'll go from the last to the first.
Okay.
How do I register for that afternoon pervious concrete maintenance webinar?
Paveahead.com, and under education, there are their webinars. And you can register on that website.
What is the cost compared to regular concrete?
So that is the second most asked question. First is about maintenance. The second is about cost. So if you only compare the pavement section, your pervious concrete is a little bit more than your traditional concrete. However, you're having, if you take into account the stormwater management system, and you don't have to put in all of the water management infrastructure to drain that water off-site and connect it to the stormwater system, you're going to see a huge savings. So if you want specifics, I will send you one of our contractors to give you specific pricing for Florida. But just in general, it's going to be a little bit more if you only look at the concrete section of your project. But you need to take a more holistic approach, and there your pervious, in most cases, is going to save you money unless you have really cheap land that you can use as a retention pond. So we're seeing less of that cheap land here in Florida. So it is becoming a very good option.
The next question is, what is the name of the second software calculator in the presentation, and can it be downloaded freely? I already answered this question, and it's called Storage. It's available at the NRMCA.org website, and soon a link will be provided on our PaveWise website.
Thank you, Roger. So yes, we can help you with the hydration software. My email is here at the bottom of the screen, Wedel@fcpa.org, and we can help you get that software. It's active, so we're making it available for free to you guys today, but it is actually a software that you purchased from the National Ready Mix Concrete Association.
We just had one to come in, so let's go. I haven't had a chance to answer this one. Hello, how can we increase the strength of the concrete using 1 to 5 millimeter aggregate in the mix? Strength, we get 870 PSI. This compared to FD requirement of 3,000 PSI or 4,000 PSI. Let me kind of answer this one, because I think you already answered this in the presentation, that we do not design this for strength. We design it for porosity. And so strength is really not a requirement, but we do not recommend that you're going to use this on heavy loads, like a highway with plenty of truck traffic. You don't want to use it in that situation.
Yes, that is correct. And there's no strength test for pervious concrete. It's not a valid test. However, we do know that you can add back in a little bit of the sand. You're going to lose some of your porosity, but you will increase the strength. But there's no way to test for that. We know that from doing many tests, and because with the void space, you can't do your typical test. You're going to go through thousands of samples before you really get an indication of the strength of any given mix. But we do know that you can add some sand back in and get a little more strength. But yes, like Roger said, this is a perfect application for parking lots. You will not have any issue. However, if you're getting into an industrial situation, you're going to want to go with traditional concrete.
Are the presentation slides available in PDF?
Yes, we will make that available.
Oh, we got another one that came in. You also mentioned you have an upcoming webinar on design. When will that be available? I can answer that one. We're working on that. More than likely, it'll be in July, and we'll inform all you that are on this conference and all our other folks that when that's available.
Yes, so that is one of our next planned webinars, is on the Pavement Designer software, which is really a great software. So I would encourage all of you to join that as well. And
we have a number of questions here from Hamad Jafarian, and we'll probably don't have enough time to answer those questions here today, but we can certainly get back with him on the other ones. Like, is there a minimum requirement for the bearing on the load? Also, you mentioned you have an upcoming webinar. Okay, we answered that one. Can GeoGrid be used to increase strength? That's a good question. I know that you like to use GeoGrid and put gravel in there, and that increases the strength of a base. So I would have to say that would be an interesting way to look at it, and that maybe we should do some sort of experiment with that and see what the strength is.
I can say that there have been projects where the underlying soil was very sandy and very porous, and they used the geotextile grid and filled it with that same material, sandy material, and put the pervious concrete directly on top of it, because the drainage was so quick that they did not need a reservoir. So it has been used in certain locations that have rapidly draining soil. All right, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're right on 12 o'clock. All right, so if there's no other burning questions, we will get back to you in answering any that we did not get to hear during the live presentation, we'll get back to you with those questions. And thank you everyone for your attendance today. And I look forward to meeting with you again in person one day. Thanks a lot and have a good day.